This is a recording for the Club of Open Data Enthusiasts, and it's based on a webinar that I gave a couple of months ago, which is an introduction to R in the Tidyverse. So we're going to talk about R, and this is a basic introduction. So if you've never used R before, we're going to talk about what R is. And then the Tidyverse, which is a set of tools that you can use to help you do data cleaning and some data analysis. So first, why should we learn R? Well, as you can see here from the chart, it's got a lot of advantages. One of the things I like about it is it's an open source language. It has a very large community. People are always constantly putting in extensions and plugins and tutorials. It's a very advanced statistical language. You can get machine learning on this. You can get text analysis, AI applications, deep learning. So whatever is happening in the data analysis, the statistical world, you can probably find a package for it on R. And installing the packages is quite easy, and thanks to RStudio, which we'll talk about in a second here, it's very easy to use this. And the graphing, and I'll show a few parts of the graphs, is just amazing. So great language to pick up, open source, free to use, and can just jump right on in there. So this is RStudio. Now RStudio itself is open source. There are some paid versions of this. This is made by another company that was acquired by Microsoft, I believe, maybe a year, 2 years ago. I want to say almost 3 years ago. Anyway, R itself is a command line interface. So, you're all familiar with the command lines. If you're as old as I am, you remember the MS-DOS command lines and all this. So RStudio essentially helps you with R by giving you these 4 great areas to work with. So you have the code editor there at the top, that's number 1, and then the console. So whatever you type in the code editor, you can see it execute immediately in the R console. On the right-hand side, you see the workspace and history. This is a good way to keep up with what you're watching and what you're working with, and also to help you save files and do other things, which we'll show here in a moment how you can use this with the Tidyverse. And then the lower right-hand side are plots and files. That's your file manager, and does your plotting for you. So you can see, like, for example, some of the example graph of what you'll get from R. Now, the data analysis process in Tidyverse is pretty much the same kind of data analysis process you would have in other tools, like SAS or Python. And the idea here is that you start on the left-hand side and you're importing in data, and then you want to clean up the data. And a lot of times, early on, this took a lot of work. And now, thanks to the Tidyverse, it's not as much work to do this. And one of the things that we'll talk about in a second here is the Tidyverse philosophy of how to do data cleaning. And then you got the part here where you have the understand, so you can take your data and transform it, visualize it, model it. And then you have ways of communicating it out. There's such things as R notebooks, and then the entire ggplot, which is the graphing engine that helps you really show the data in very colorful and informative ways. So you can see the process from the previous slide here. Superimposed on it are all the various packages that are in the Tidyverse that can go along with the import, tidy, explore, and communicate process. So on the left-hand side, you see read R, which helps you read in text files and other large data files. We have a read Excel, which helps you read in Excel spreadsheets. Haven, which is another package that helps with the data import process. And then Tidy, which is the Tidy R process, which has a lot of different functions. You can kind of see down here at the bottom too, the data frames, the factors, the strings. Ways of just taking the data that you have imported in and cleaning it up and putting it into the Tidy model, which basically, with the Tidy model, your data is dimensionalized, which means that you have columns and rows, excuse me, and it makes sure that you have the data in a setup in such a way that we can use the tools like dplyr, per, broom, ggplot, knitter, and markdown to work with that data. Now at the top you see this kind of this kind of strange character here. This is called the pipe. And you have the percentage sign, and then the right-facing bracket, and then the percentage sign again. That's how you essentially string commands together, and I'll be showing that a little bit later here in the presentation. So Hadley Wickham is the person who created the Tidyverse set of packages. He's also included other packages that people have created. And this is his philosophy about the tidy approach. Each variable should be a column, each observation should be a row, and each type of observational unit should be a table. This helps a great deal because sometimes you'll have unstructured data that is just pulled from text files. It could be in all kinds of formats. And with the Tidyverse, it helps put it into this variable, column, row, and table to help us with an analysis of it and make more sense of our data. Now, in preparing this presentation today, I relied on two books. The R for Data Science, which was written by Hadley Wickham and Carrot Grolman. And then R Projects for Dummies, which is not really that easy, actually. But it does have a great set of R projects, some of which use the Tidyverse. And it's just a kind of nice hands-on way of walking through using the Tidyverse if you've never used it before. It's also good if you haven't used R before because it kind of goes through the project-based learning. So in other words, you learn R as you do various projects. And these are two great books to help you learn how to work with the R platform and the Tidyverse. So in R, we start preparing and reshaping data in R for easier analysis. Now, what does that mean exactly? We import our data in, we convert data to a modern format, in this case, the Tidyverse, and then we organize it for easier analysis. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the presentation. But this is the flow of work. So right now, I want to show you what a table looks like in a Tidyverse. And as you notice, it's called a tibble. So yeah, you'll see a lot of this kind of punning around with tidy and the various, functions you may have been used to before. So a tibble essentially is just like a data frame. It's essentially a data frame or a table for you folks that are not used to the idea of what a data frame is. And again, it's going with, you have your observations in rows, you have variables as columns, and your table, that's your observational unit. That's the tibble. And what it does here is it sets your data up so that you can easily access it and view it and start using the Tidyverse commands, especially from dplyr, to help you pull out data and make sense of the data. So just kind of showing you here real quick, you can see here we have the sepal length, sepal width, and you can see how it shows you kind of a very nice summary in about the first 5 rows of what you're going to see with the table. And as you can see here at the bottom, we have 145 more rows to look at. So it gives you some information about the data you're working with. So this is after we've imported the data, and then we have used the Tidyverse to create a tibble out of it. Now, the workhorse of the Tidyverse, or I consider it the workhorse of the Tidyverse, is your data manipulation package, the dplyr. And the best way to think about it, it has a grammar, these verbs for data manipulation. And what this allows you to do, these different verbs, and I have them listed below here, is it allows you to reorder the rows. You can filter the rows. You can select things, pick variables by their names, create new variables by taking, let's say, 2 columns and putting them together and create a whole new column that's essentially a combination of those other 2 columns or 3 columns or how many columns you put together. And then you have a group by, and if you used SQL, you know what a group by is, but essentially if you don't, it just allows you to take your data, and let's say, for example, some data I'm working on right now. I'm looking at Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey data by agency. I can use my group by, and it'll allow me to group the data by agency name. And then summarize, collapse many values down to a single summary. So again, the mean, the standard deviation, all those descriptive statistical methods that you have, and also the very common count, method. So when we take a look at select here, you can see on the left-hand side, this is our table, and using the select verb, we can pull out these 2 columns. That'll give us all the observations. So select allows us to pull out the variables. And again, in the Tidyverse, it's the columns that you're pulling out. Whereas filter is a lot like select, but instead of selecting just the columns, we select just the observations. So for some reason we want to know just about the information with Alberto and Anna, we can pull out any rows that have, if the storm is Alberta, we can pull out the row that has any information about Alberta or Anna. So select, that helps you pull out the variables you want to look at. Filter helps you filter out the observations you want to zero in on. And again, another graphical representation here. You can see at the top here with select, how it kind of works across there. Same thing with this. Arrange, we can basically, let's say for example, we want to do just a simple alphabetical sort, maybe sort by date and time. We can use arrange to do that. Mutate, as you can see here. We can take two columns and all of a sudden we've created a whole new column. And then with summarize, we can take all our columns here and we've taken some observation. Let's say we go back to Alberta and Anna. We can say, okay, what was the mean wind speed for Anna? And that could be our yellow here. What was the mean wind speed for Alberta? That could be our red. And just real quick, I want to show you ggplot and just the number of graphs that you have here. Now, ggplot is not created by Hadley Wickham. It's been in the R package for a while. It's actually ggplot 2, so it's actually the sequel to the original ggplot. And as I understand it, they are making a version of the package that will fit more into the Tidyverse, that you can actually use the dplyr verbs and some of the more Tidyverse use commands. But just wanted to give you a kind of quick snapshot of the really interesting different varieties of graphs that you can create with ggplot. You can create very simple graphs. You can create some of these very elaborate, colorful, and image ready. So these are created in RStudio, and then you can just copy out or export it out as a JPEG or a GIF or however you want to do it and pop it right into your slideshow. So I want to show you what RStudio looks like in action with Tidyverse. And I will, of course, be showing you close-ups of this, but this is how I have it set up for myself. So I've actually closed Terminal right now, but I have console on. And I just kind of type in here, and this is showing me what all my stuff is. And what I did is I made sure that Tidyverse is installed. And you can always go over here and check on the right-hand side, look under Packages, and just scroll down that list and you can see it. The environment right now is empty, but you can have a history panel to take a look at. And you can also see where you can have the import data sets, which uses the Tidyverse to help you import data sets this way. So there's a kind of a GUI version of that. Anyway, I have gone ahead and installed something called New York City Flights 13. That's the New York City flights for 2013. And it's just a sample data set that comes with R that you can use to do some experiments with. So a close-up of what I was doing here, I made sure that I had Tidyverse installed before, so to invoke it, I just say library Tidyverse. And that's how you do things in R. If you need to use a certain package, you first use the library command so that it's loaded in. And it just tells me, that it's in there and there might be some conflicts and I just have to update it. So it's just information that really tells you, yes, it's ready to go. And then glimpse New York City flights. I wanted to show you this error here. I wanted to make sure that you see sometimes when you look for stuff and you don't see it, there's an error in glimpse, we can't find it. I had to make sure I installed it. And it's install.packages New York City Flights 13. It is a zip file. This is the nice thing about R. It will download the zip file, unzip it for you, check it, put it out there, and it's ready for your use. So RStudio is a great tool to work with again because it automates a lot of these things that you would otherwise have to do yourself, where you would have to manually download the zip file, manually unzip the file, and then put it into working directory and all these things. RStudio kind of handles that for you automatically. So I have my library of New York City flights, and Glimpse here gives you essentially a nice way of looking at the package or what you have in the database. And instead of going across like you've seen earlier where we had the columns go across horizontally, I can put them in vertically, and then I can get an idea of what kind of data is in there. So mostly integers, double, few characters, CHR, and it gives me a nice little quick snapshot of what the data would look like. So this is a good way so I can quickly make sure that my database has been, or my data set has been imported in correctly, and gives me an idea what kind of data I'm looking at and the types. And then, nice thing with RStudio is you remember on the right-hand side, I can look at my data sets here. I can just click on it, and it will show me the table in a kind of Excel spreadsheet view. So if you like that better, you can see it this way, and you can scroll across. So if you're very used to Excel and you're moving over to R, this is kind of a nice way to help you do the transition. So it looks a lot like Excel to you and can help you work with it. And again, it's nothing, really new that you've seen here. With this, I mean, we've had the flights up here. We can have different tables across. And this is down here, console and terminal. So it'll pop up this table view, again, the Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to try to view flights. Again, get errors. And one of the things I tell folks when they're working with R, don't freak out when you get errors. You'll get them a lot sometimes. And it's just a simple thing of going in and just checking what you've done. So for example, view, and you may not be able to see it very clearly here. It's kind of hard to highlight it for you. In Tidyverse, it's case sensitive. So when I first tried to do view flights, I had lowercase v. That's why I could not find the function view. So I had to do uppercase, and then we were fine. So just again, when you have those errors, and it's kind of nice to have the console and it's going back and forth, you can understand what's going on here. So I want to show this here in a second, but what I did is I actually ran a dplyr command using all the pipes and everything, and I will explain this in a second here what this is all about, and was able to get my information out. So basically what I wanted to do here was take a look at New York City flights only in January, okay, and then day one, the first 5 days in January. And what I was interested in was for the airline, let's see, which airline did I do? Oh, Origin. So came from EWR, and I apologize. I don't remember exactly. I think it's Newark. All the flights that originated from Newark, and I guess the airport name is EWR. So for January, the first 5 days in January, I wanted to see how long the flights were in the air, the mean air time, and the standard deviation. So from all the observations, all the flights that day, you have different air times, and I wanted to see what was the average, and then what was the standard deviation from the average. So we're actually going to take a closer look at that command and take it apart here. So with dplyr, first I set this up. This is my assignment operator. So I want to make sure that, this is Newark, January, and then the left arrow, and then the dash. That is my assignment operator, and that's saying please create a new data frame from flights, which is my flights New York City one, and then pipe into it. Now, real quickly, if you've never dealt with pipes before, all a pipe is in computer programming is I do an operation, and then the output of that operation gets sent to another operation as an input. So as you can see here, I'm going to go pick from flights, and then I'm going to pipe flights into this filter, and I say I only want the observations where the Newark flights, just the Newark flights, and just for the January month, that's month equal 1, and for days lesser than or equal to 5, so the first 5 days of January. So I'm piping in the entire data set, and then I'm pulling out of that data set using the filter just these specific variables. Okay, see, just filtering for that. And then the output of that is being piped into this group by day. So all I'm doing now is taking that smaller version of that data set and saying now group it by day. So the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day. And then the result of that, I want you to summarize essentially the mean air time. And this na.rm is if there's not an answer or there's not available data, I want you to remove that, so that it doesn't confuse the data. So again, you may have in your data set where you don't have a 0 or you just have missing data, or there's just data that wasn't recorded, and that can throw off your calculations. So in this case here, I want to make sure that my mean is only calculated from actual observations and not from actual observations plus any missing data. It may throw it off a bit, so that's why we do this. Again, we have the standard deviation, so that's the second thing I want to summarize. And again, it's the airtime and removing any not available data. So just to kind of go through this again, we assigned a new data frame for my flights. which is the flights New York City 13. We filtered through a different set of commands here, and then I'm going to view it to show the actual result from it. And that's what you got here. Okay, so this is day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the mean air times and the standard deviation. And you'll notice up here I have a library knitter, and this cable, this is another way of showing the table and kind of if you need it in like a text version. Knitter is another library that helps you put things together in RStudio so that you can put together HTML or markdown documents. I've even seen books written with Knitter, which is pretty neat. And the cable is a part of Knitter, which essentially creates a table format that you can use in HTML documents or markdown documents. And again, we're kind of doing the punning here. It's a table, but it's from Knitter, so it's a cable. So we're going to do a nice little GG plot, very simple. Newark, January. This is another command for day and mean, plus the geometrical point. Essentially, the idea here is I took the data frame I created earlier, and I wanted to show the average airtime, and this is how it's plotting it out for us. So it's interesting that you can see from this chart here that there seems to be more, or maybe it's more flights, or maybe they just spend more time in the air on the first day, you know, being New Year's Eve, I guess, or New Year's Day, excuse me, and then the second day it just kind of drops off till you get to the fourth day, and then you kind of jump back up on the fifth day. So a very simple graph, very simple. And you can export it out, as you can see here, zoom in on it, and you can there's different publishing options. So let's go ahead and look at it here as a bar chart, and gives us an idea of kind of the X day, Y mean. Essentially, we look at it again, the same flight data, okay, that we just created earlier. And then what I wanted to do, and this is kind of a nice thing. So let's say you're doing this and you're taking a look at different flights, and you're taking a look at different airlines in different origin cities. You can easily, once you created the original command that you have, you can save it. Or as I was doing here, I was playing with this, and what I did is I created the original command, and then I hit the up arrow, and it would copy it back on for me. So as you can see here on this second line, we have the original New York January. What I did is I recreated that. Instead of Newark, you know, the EWA, I've hit LGA. And what I should have done is really actually renamed the data frame so I don't lose the data in my New York January, because I'm overwriting it now. But again, everything else is still the same. And then one of the things I had a problem with, though, is I did have a error happen. So that's fine. If you have an error again, even with something this large, you just hit that up arrow and then you can go and correct it. So it'll tell you again how you're working with it. And we can show you next time the bar chart and such. But the idea with this is that as you go along, RStudio is recording what you're doing, and it has your history file, and it collects all your errors. So again, when I'm teaching folks about R, one of the things I say is you're going to make errors, especially when you start creating something this complex. Because you don't have to use the pipe. I mean, I could do a one-line Newark January, assign flights to it, next line, okay, filter Newark January this way. I can have this all broken out. And if it's easy for you to do that when you start, it's great. But the reason why the piping helps you is because you can make it more compact, and other folks can see the flow of what you're doing. So I like piping. Just remember, though, as the longer you get along in the piping chain, the more things you have to keep up with. And then we have the LGA, and we decided, oh, let me see here. Yes, I also expanded the number of days that I wanted to look at. So instead of just the first 5 days in January, I want to look at 10 days. And again, it's the mean air time and just how long those flights have been in the air. So that is R in the Tidyverse. That's a quick introduction to it, but my whole purpose is to show you that R is not a scary language. It's actually very forgiving. It's very easy to work with. There's a lot of tutorials out there. You just take it as you go along. It's a very complex, dynamic language, and you can do a lot with it. But with some of the easier stuff, there's a package out there that'll help you. There's even a package out there that'll actually teach you R as you go along with practice examples. And one of the things I like about the Tidyverse, if you've been in data science for a while, you know how hard it is sometimes to clean data, and I really like the Tidyverse approach to this because it can help you with that information. So we had stopped by the code table on July 25th. We were out there at the food trucks. Of course, that's past now. And coming up this week, we have the code happy hour at the leadership forum. So on Wednesday evening, come by. We have some soft drinks, we have some snacks, and we're going to be showing off all kinds of different applications. So love to see you there. So thank you for sitting through this, and I hope you enjoyed looking at R and how it works and all the kind of neat possibilities you have with it. And look for more webinars coming in the future about R and other data analytic topics from code.